on the earth. In the beginning, God, earth's earliest age, the creation. These first four words, as in the beginning God, of the Bible form the foundation for faith. Believe these words and you can believe all that follows in the Bible. Genesis provides the only authoritative account of creation, meaningful for people of all ages, but exhaustible by no one. The divine record assumes the existence of God rather than seeking to prove it. The Bible has a special name for those who choose to deny the fact of God. That name is fool. Just as the Bible begins with God, so He should be first in our lives. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. By the heavens, some understand the supreme heaven, the heaven of heavens, the habitation of God, and of the holy angels, and this being made perfect at once. No mention is after made of it, and as of the earth. And it is supposed that the angels were at this time created, since they were present at the laying of the foundation of the earth. Job 38:6. But rather the lower and visible heavens are meant, at least are not excluded, that is, the substance of them, as it being imperfect and adorned, the expanse not yet made, or the ether and air not yet stretched out, nor any light placed in them, adorned with the sun, moon, and stars. So the earth is to be understood, not of that properly so called, as separated from the waters, that is, the dry land afterwards made to appear, but the whole mass of the earth and water before their separation, and when in their unformed and unadorned state, described in the next verse in short. These words represent the visible heavens and the terraqueous globe in their chaotic state, as they were first brought into being by Almighty power. The prefix to both words is, as an Ibn Ezra observes, expressive of notification or demonstration, as pointing at those heavens and this earth, and shows that these things visible are here spoken of whatever is above us or below us to be seen. For in the Arabic language, as he also observes, the word for heaven comes from one which signifies high or above, as that for earth from one that signifies low and beneath or under. Now it was the matter or substance of these that was first created, for the word set before them signifies substance, as both Ibn Ezra and Kimichi affirm. Maimonides observes that this particular, according to their wise man, is the same as with, and then the sense is, God created with the heavens whatsoever are in the heavens, and with the earth whatsoever are in the earth. That is the substance of all things in them. or all things in them were seminally together. For so he illustrates it by an husbandman sowing seeds of diverse kinds in the earth at one and the same time, some of which come up after 1 day, and some after 2 days, and some after 3 days, though all sown together. These are said to be created, that is, to be made out of nothing. For what pre-existence mattered to this choice could there be out of which they could be formed? And the apostle says, through faith we understand the worlds were formed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. In Hebrews 11:3, and though this word is sometimes used, and even in this chapter, of production of creatures out of pre-existent matter, as in Genesis 1:21 says, yet as Nachmanides observes, there is not in the holy language any word but this here used, by which is signified the bringing anything into out of nothing. And many of the Jews interprets, as Ibn Ezra understand by creation here, a production of something into being out of nothing. And Kimichi says that creation is making some new thing, and a bringing something out of nothing. And it deserves notice that this word is only used of God, and creation must be the work of God. For none but an almighty power could produce something out of nothing. The word is used is Elohimo, which some derive from another, which signifies power, creation being an act of almighty power. But it is rather to be derived from the root in the Arabic language, which signifies to worship God, being the object of all religious worship and adoration. And very properly does Moses make use of this appellation here to teach us that he who is the creator of the heavens and the earth is the sole object of worship, as he was of the worship of the Jewish nation, at the head of which Moses was. It is in the plural number, and being joined to a verb of the singular, is thought by many to be designed to point unto us the mystery of a plurality or a trinity of persons in the unity of the divine essence. But whether or no this is sufficient to support the doctrine which is to be established without it, and there is no doubt to be made that all the three persons in the Godhead were concerned in the creation of all things. Psalms 33:6. The heathen poet Orpheus has a notion somewhat similar to this, who writes that all things were made by one Godhead of three names, and that this God is all things. And of all these things the heavens and the earth were made by God. In the beginning, either in the beginning of time or when time began, as he did with the creatures, it being nothing but the measure of creatures' duration, and therefore could not be until such existed. Or as Jerky interprets it, in the beginning of the creation, when God first began to create, and is best explained by our God. The beginning of the creation which God created, Mark 13:19, and the sense is either that as soon as God created, or the first he did create were the heavens and the earth, to which agrees the Arabic version, nor anything was created before them. Or in connection with the following words, thus went first, or in the beginning. When God created the heavens and the earth, then the earth was without form. The Jerusalem Targum renders it. In wisdom God created Proverbs 3:19. And some of the ancients have interpreted it of the wisdom of God, the Logos and Son of God. From hence we learn that the world was not eternal, either as to the matter or form of it, as Aristotle and some other philosophers have asserted, but had a beginning, and that its being is not owing to the fortuitous motion and conjunction of atoms, but to the power and wisdom of God, the first cause and sole author of all things. And there was not anything created before the heaven and the earth were. Hence those phrases, before the foundation of the world and before the world began, are expressive of eternity. This utterly destroys the notion of the pre-existence of the souls of men or of the souls of the Messiah. False, therefore, is what the Jews say, that paradise, the righteous, Israel, Jerusalem were created before the world, unless they mean that these were foreordained by God to be, which perhaps they sense. Earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. It was not in the form it now is, otherwise it must have a form, as all matters has. It was a fluid matter. The watery parts were not separated from the earthy ones. It was not put into the form of a terraqueous globe. It is now. The sea apart and the earth by itself, but were mixed and blended together. It was as both the Targums of Jonathan and Jerusalem paraphrase it, a waste and desert, empty and destitute of both men and beasts. And it may be added of fishes and fowls, and also of trees, herbs and plants. It was, as Ovid calls it, a choice and an indested mass of matter. And Hesiod makes a choice first to exist, and then the wide extended earth, and so our face and others. And this is agreeable to the notion of various nations. The Chinese make a choice to be the beginning of all things, out of which the immaterial being, God, made all things that consist of matter, which they distinguish into parts they call yin and yang, the one signifying hidden or imperfect, the other open or perfect. And so the Egyptians, according to Diodorus Siculus, whose opinion he is supposed to give, thought the system of the universe had but one form, the heaven and earth, and the nature of them being mixed and blended together, until by degrees they separated and obtained the form they now have. And the Phoenicians, as Sanchoniato relates, supposed the principle of the universe to be a dark and windy air, or the blast of a dark air, and a turbid
are surrounded with darkness as follows. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. The whole fluid mass of earth and water mixed together. This abyss is explained by waters in the next class, which seems to be uppermost, and this was all a dark, turbid chaos, as before expressed without any light or motion, till an hesitation was made by the Spirit, as is next observed. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, which covered the earth. Psalms 104:6. The earthy particles being heaviest sunk lower, and the waters being lighter rose up above the others. Hence tells the philosopher makes water to be the beginning of all things, as do the Indian Brahmins, and Aristotle himself owns that this was the most ancient opinion concerning the origin of the universe, and observes that it was not only the opinion of Thales, but of those that were the most remote from the then present generation in which he lived, and of those that first wrote on divine things. And it is frequent in Hesiod and Homer to make oceans, or the ocean with the Tethys to be the parents of generation. And so the scriptures represent the original earth as standing out of the water and consisting of it. 2 Peter 3:5. And upon the surface of these waters, before they were drained off the earth, the Spirit of God moved, which is to be understood not of wind, as uncles Ibn Ezra and many Jewish writers as well as Christians interpret it, since the air which the wind is a motion of was not made until the second day. The Targums of Jonathan and Jerusalem call it the Spirit of mercies, and by it is meant the Spirit of the Messiah, as many Jewish writers call him. That is the third person in the Blessed Trinity, who was concerned in the creation of all things, as in the garnishing of the heavens, so in bringing the confused matter of the earth and water into form and order. See Job 26:13. The same Spirit moved or brooded upon the face of the waters to impregnate them, as an hen upon eggs to hatch them. So he too separated the parts which were mixed together, and give them a quickening virtue to produce living creatures in them. This sense and idea of the word are finally expressed by our poet. Some traces of this appear in the or mind of Anaxagoras, which when all things were mixed together came and set them in order. And the men's of Thales he calls God, which formed all things out of water, and the spirits infuse a light or Virgil. And with this agrees what Hermes says, that there was an infinite darkness in the abyss or deep, and water and a small intelligent spirit. endued with a divine power, wherein the choice, and perhaps from hence is the mundane egg or egg of Orpheus, or the firstborn or first laid egg, out of which all things were formed, and which he borrowed from the Egyptians and Phoenicians, and perhaps from the Jews, and which was reckoned by them a resemblance of the world. The Egyptians had a deity they called Knep, out of whose mouth went forth an egg, which they interpreted of the world, and the Jophesmin of the Phoenicians, heavenly birds, according to Sanchoniathon, of the form of an egg. And in the rites of Bacchus they worshipped an egg as being an image of the world. As Marcobius says, and therefore he thought the question whether an hen or an egg was oldest was of some moment and deserved consideration. And the Chinese say that the first man was produced out of the choice as from an egg, the shell of which formed the heavens, the white the air, and the yolk the earth, unto this incubation of the same, or wind, as some would have it, is owing the windy egg of Aristophanes, son of Chamler, who survived in 1780 and 1847. In 1814 was the first to purpose that there is a gap between verse 1 and 2. Into this gap, he places a pre-Adamic age, about which the scriptures say nothing. Some great catastrophe took place, which left the earth without form and void, are ruined, in which state it remained for as many years as the geologists required. This speculation has been popularized by the 1917 Scofield Reference Bible. However, the numerous rock layers that are the supposed proof for these ages were mainly laid down by Noah's flood. In Exodus 20 chapter and 11th verse, we read of literal 6-day creation. No gaps, not even for 1 minute, otherwise these would not be 6 normal days. Also in Romans chapter 5 and verse 12, we read that death is the result of Adam's sin, because the rock layers display death on a grand scale. They could not have existed before the fall of Adam. There is no direct evidence that the earth is much older than 6,000 years. However, we have the direct eyewitness report of God Himself that He made everything in 6 days. Tracing back through the biblical genealogies, we can determine the age of the universe to be about 6,000 years, with an error of not more than 2%.
And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. This phrase, "and God said," this phrase is used 9 times in this account of the creation. It is admired by Longinus, the heathen, in his treatise of the Sublime, as a noble instance of it.
and it is most beautifully paraphrased and explained in Psalm 33:6 as expressive of all the willpower, authority, and efficacy of the divine being, whose word is clothed with power, and who can do and does whatever he will, and who, as soon as he pleases, his orders are always obeyed. Perhaps the divine person speaking here is the Logos or Word of God, which was in the beginning with God, and was God, and who himself is the light that lightens every creature. These words are spoke here. Let there be light, and there was light. It at once appeared. God commanded light to shine out of darkness. As the apostle says, 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 6, this was the first thing made out of the dark to us, as in the new creation. A work of grace in the heart. Light is the first thing produced there. What this light was is not easy to say. Some of the Jews rabbins and also some Christian writers think the angels are designed by it, which is not at all probable, as the ends and use of this light show. Others of them are of opinion that it is the same with the sun, of which a repetition is made on the fourth day, because of its use and efficacy to the earth and its plants. But others more rightly take it to be different from the sun, and a more glimmering light, which afterwards was gathered into and perfected in the body of the sun. It is the opinion of Jankius, and which approved of by our countrymen, Mr. Fuller, that it was a lucid body, or a small lucid cloud, which by its circular motion from east to west made day and light, perhaps somewhat like the cloudy pillar of fire that guided the Israelites in the wilderness, and had no doubt heat as well as light, and which two indeed more or less go together, and of such fiery particles this body may well be thought to consist. The word Ur signifies both fire and light. God saw that light was good, and he separated the light from darkness. God saw that light, that it was good, very pleasant and delightful, useful and beneficial. That is, he foresaw it would be good, of great service, as Pycharus interprets it. For as yet there were no inhabitants of the earth to receive any advantage by it. See Ecclesiastes chapter 11 and verse 7. Besides, it was doubtless good to answer some present purpose to prepare for the work of the 2 following days, before the great luminary was formed, as to dispel the darkness of heaven, and that which covered the deep, to Raphi exhale and drop the lighter parts of the Troas, in order to form the wide extended ether, the expanded air, and the surrounding atmosphere, while the Spirit of God was agitating the waters and separating them from the earthy parts, and which also might serve to unite and harden those which were to form the dry land, and also to warm that when it appeared, that it might bring forth grass, herbs, and fruit trees. And God divided the light from the darkness, by which it should seem that they were mixed together, the particles of light and darkness. But by what way is the light parted, severed, and divided from darkness, is a question put to men by the Lord Himself, who only can answer it. Job 38, verse 24, He has so divided one from the other that they are not together at the same place and time. When light is one hemisphere, darkness is the other, and the one by certain constant revolutions is made to succeed the other, and by the motion of the one, the other gives away, as well as also God has divided and distinguished them by calling them by different names, as an Aben Ezra, and is what next follows. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God called the light day, and the darkness He called night, either by the circulating motion of the above body of light, or by the rotation of the chaos on its own axis towards it. In the space of 24 hours, there was a vicissitude of light and darkness, just as there is now by the like motion either of the sun or of the earth, and which after this appellation God has given, we call the one day and the other night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. The evening, the first part of the night, or darkness, put for the whole night, which might be about the space of 12 hours. And the morning, which was the first part of the day, or light, put also for the whole, which made the same space, and both together one natural day, consisting of 24 hours. What Daniel calls an evening, morning, Daniel chapter 8 and verse 26. And the apostle, a night, day, 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 25. Tales being asked, which was first made, the night or the day answered. The night was before one day. The Jews begin their day from the preceding evening. So many other nations. The Athenians used to reckon their day from sun setting to sun setting. The Romans from the middle of the night to the middle of the night following. As Gellius relates, and Tacitus reports of the ancient Germans, that they used to compute not the number of days, but of nights, reckoning that the number of days, but of night reckoning that the night led the day. Kaiser observes of the ancient Druids in Britain that they counted time not by the number of days but nights, and observed birthdays and the beginnings of months and years, so as that the day followed the night. And we have some traces of this still among us. As when we say this day sea night, or this day fortnight, this first day of the creation according to James Cephalus was the 18th of April, but according to Bishop Usher, the 23rd of October. The one beginning the creation in the spring, the other in autumn. It is a notion of Mr. Wiston's that the 6 days of the creation were equal to 6 years, a day and a year being one and the same thing before the fall of man, when the diurnal rotation of the earth about its axis as things began. And in agreement with this, very remarkable is the doctrine Empedocles taught, that when mankind sprung originally from the earth, the length of the day, by reason of the slowness of the sun's motion, was equal to 10 of our present months. The Hebrew word erba, rendered evening, is retained by some of the Greek poets, as by Hesiod, who says, out of the Choias came Erebus, and black night, and out of the night ether and the day. And Aristophanes, whose words are, Choias night and black Erebus were first, and wide Tartarus, but there were neither earth, air, nor heaven. But in an infinite bosom of Erebus, black winged night first brought forth a wide egg. And Orpheus makes night to be the beginning of all things. Hughes Miller, 1802-1856, was the first person to popularize the days theory. In his book Testimony of the Rocks, that was published in the year after his untimely death, he speculated that the days were really long ages. He held that Noah's flood was a local flood, and the rock layers were laid down long periods of time. This theory has been popularized by the New Scofield Bible, first published in 1967.
God said, let there be a valley between the waters to separate water from water. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 6. And God said that let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, in which the Spirit of God was sitting and moving, according to Genesis 1:2, part of which were formed into clouds and drawn up into heaven by the force of the body of fire, and light already produced, and the other part left on earth, not yet gathered into one place, as afterwards. Between these God ordered a firmament to be, or an expanse, something stretched out and spread like a curtain, tent, canopy. And to this all those passages of Scripture refer, which speak of the stretching out of the heavens, as this firmament or expanses afterwards called. Psalms 104 and verse 2, and by it is meet the air, as it is rendered by the Targum, and Psalm chapter 19 verse 1.
We call it the firmament from the word which the Greek interpreter uses because it is firm, lasting, and durable, and it has the name of an expanse from its wide extent, it reaching from the earth to the third heaven. The lower and thicker parts of it form the atmosphere in which we breathe. The higher and thinner parts of it, the air in which flows fly, and the ether or sky in which the sun, moon, and stars are placed. For all these are said to be in the firmament or expanse, according to Genesis 1:17. These are the stories in the heaven. The scriptures speak of Amos chapter 9 verse 6. And the air is divided by philosophers into higher, middle, and lower regions. And so the Targum of Jonathan places this firmament or expanse between the extremities of the heaven and the waters of the ocean. The word in the Syriac language has the sense of binding and compressing, and so it is used in Syriac version of Luke chapter 6 and version 38, and may denote the power of the air when formed in compressing the choice and dividing and separating the parts of it, and which it now has in compressing the earth and the several parts that are in it, and by its compression preserves them and retains them in their proper places, and left it to divide the waters from the waters under it from those above it, as it is explained in the next verse, of which more there. And version 7, chapter 1. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God made the firmament by a word speaking, commanding it into being, producing it out of the choice, and spreading it in that vast space between the heaven of heavens and our earth, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. The lower part of it, the atmosphere above, which are the clouds full of water, from whence rain descends upon the earth, and which divided between them and those that were left on the earth. And so under it, not it gathered into one place, as it now does between the clouds of heaven and the waters of the sea. Though Mr. Gregory is of opinion that an abyss of waters above the most supreme orb is here meant, or a great deep between the heavens and the heaven of heavens, whereas in storehouses the depth is laid up, and God has his treasures of snow, hail, and rain, and from whence he brought out the waters which drowned the world and the universal delight. Others suppose the waters above to be the crystalline heaven, which for its cleanness resembles water, and which Milton calls the crystalline ocean. And it was so. The firmament was accordingly made and answered this purpose, to divide the waters below it from those above it. Or it was formed stable and durable, and so it has continued. And chapter 1, version 8. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And God saw that it was good. And God called the firmament heaven, including the starry and airy heavens. It has its name from its height in the Arabic language, it being above the earth and reaching to the third heaven, though others take the word Shemaim to be a compound of two words, Sham and Maim. That is, there are waters, namely in the clouds of heaven. On the evening and the morning were the second day. These together made up the space of 24 hours, which was another natural day, the body of light created on the first day, having again moved around the Troas in the space of time. Or else the Troas had turned around on its own axis in the time. Each revolution produced a second day, and which according to Kephalos was the 19th of April, and according to Bishop Usher, the 24th of October. It is an observation that everyone may make that the phrase, and God saw that it was good, is not used at the close of this day's work, as of the rest. The reason some Jewish writers give us, because the angels fell on this day, but it is a much better which Turkey gives, and that is because the work of the waters was not finished. It was begun on the second day and perfected on the third. And there the phrase is twice used in the account of the third day's work. The Septuagint version adds it here indeed, but without any foundation.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, God. Earth's earliest first four words as in the beginning God of the Bible form the foundation for faith. Mention is often made of it and as of the earth.